Hello, everyone. Hello. Hello, everyone. Can you hear me? I feel like I can, okay, there we go. Now I can hear myself. Okay, great. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Jessica Kimball, and I lead our diversity inclusion efforts here at Mattel. And I'd like to welcome you to our first ever Women in Leadership series kickoff. We are very excited. We have a wonderful speaker here today to kick the series off, really talking about what the gender gap looks like in the workplace. But more than that, and I saw her speak recently, she's a wonderful speaker that really engages the audience quite a bit. So please, by all means, at the end, if you have any questions, Sahar is such a wonderful, sort of knowledgeable person in this space, so please be sure to ask questions. Once again, for everyone here, thank you for coming. I'm going to hand it over to one of our co-presidents of Women at Mattel, Mary Baha, to introduce Sahar. So thank you.
Thanks everyone for coming today. My name is Mary Baha, and I'm the co-president of Women Mattel with Joni Pratt. Many of you have noticed that there are buttons on your chairs. Hashtag We Rise. And we didn't have enough today, but we will definitely have more for our other events. But the theme of our Women of Leadership series is We Rise, because together, we rise together. So thank you for joining us today. We have one of our speaker today is considered one of our nation's authorities on diversity and inclusion. She's won multiple awards, including our Diversity Insights Award, a Leadership Excellence Award. She's also lived, worked, educated in many different parts of the world. So talk about being global. And on top of that, she's a founder of the Sahar Consulting and Reinvent Yourself to Greatness. So please join me in welcoming Sahar Andrade.
So the main barrier for women to advance, or for the gender gap in general to advance, is unconscious bias. And we would think that unconscious bias would come only from males. Actually, it's from males and females. Unfortunately, there are women that see competition as being catty, and I need to pull you down so I can stand out. Actually, the word competition in its own meaning, it's a very old Greek word that means cooperation. It meant those teams that used to, like someone will run and then take the baton from the next person and move on. That was competition means, meaning we cooperate with each other. But some women take it the wrong way. And obviously, there is unconscious bias between males and females. And just to let you know what unconscious bias means. Unconscious bias, we don't have to be ashamed of it, because we all have it, no matter how open-minded we have. But people are very touchy-feely when we talk about it, because if I'm going to say I have unconscious bias, that might mean that I'm a racist. But it has nothing to do with that. Unconscious bias is our brain power to defend us. The first function of the brain is to defend us, to protect us about danger, either real or perceived. So that's why we are kept in our comfort zone. That's why we deal with people only that look like us, that speak like us, that think like us. And this is where in-groups start coming. And that's why we need to be very careful on who we mentor, who we assign for projects, who we interview, who we attract. All this has to do with unconscious bias. So we make decisions on a minute because of whatever we feel on the outside. And again, it could be perceptions, and perceptions can be right or wrong. So we need to stop for a second and think, am I having any unconscious bias here? And it's called unconscious because we don't know about it. So we don't have to be ashamed of it. But it's not that we have it, it's what we do with it that really count. Remember? So it's unconscious bias can lead to prejudice. Prejudice can lead to stereotype. Stereotype can lead to discrimination. Prejudice is an attitude, but discrimination is a behavior. So we need to know at least what kind of unconscious bias. And I'm sure you know Harvard had did a very good test. It's online, it's free, it's the implicit bias test. If you take it, you'll be very surprised. I did it myself, and I'm like, yeah, I'm going to score so high. And I'm like, oh my God, really? So I suggest that you take that test. So that's what does unconscious bias does? Usually, in general, they look at women as caregivers. and the man takes charge. That's the difference of what unconscious bias have. That when women are lucky, are successful because they're lucky. That's unconscious bias. They have been in the right place at the right time. Their mistakes are noticed and remembered. Whenever there is a promotion that includes traveling or staying up or late, a woman is not even thought about to be offered that job. And again, I'm not saying that it happens everywhere. There is always individual differences wherever we are. So I'm not stereotyping here. I'm just talking in general. When a woman gets married and she is on the fast track list, she's taken off that list because she's going to get pregnant and she's going to be a mommy and she's not going to have time to move forward. Same for pregnancy. Inability to work after hours and join, the boys for drinks and all that. This is, they cannot travel, they cannot relocate. All these, I'm not saying that every single one of these is in every organization, but it goes from one reason to the other, or one or two at the same time. More of that, as when we tell women that you have to be a leader, and in leadership there is a feminine aspect and there is a masculine aspect, regardless of genders. So feminine aspect meaning when you are trying to have the team discussion, have buy-in, you start conversation, you seek opinions. And sometimes in leadership, this is the best thing to do, but it's looked at as a feminine character, as soft, as mushy. But the masculine, and that's why sometimes men, because of the gender gap that we have, they feel they have to double down on their masculine character on being a leader. So assertive women, we toss them in and we say, you need to be a leader. And these are the characters we actually expect from a leader. So she becomes assertive, and all of a sudden, a woman becomes a man in a dress. But if she's really assertive, they call her aggressive, pushy, rude, and if sometimes even the B word. But if they are participative, they become too soft or too weak to handle a team. Assumption that woman's success is because a man helped her and not on her own merits. All these are part of the unconscious bias. That's why we need to get the unconscious bias out there. And also the women, how they feel themselves, their unconscious bias about their value. Because no matter how successful we are, we get parts of the imposter syndrome, specifically women. It's just like every single, I speak almost every day, but every single day before I go in front of a new audience, I have these little butterflies. And I start thinking, are they going to get what I'm going to say? Are they going to like me? And we all think about that, is how we train our brain to deal with it when it comes out. So how women value themselves, this is very important as well. And sometimes because of the unconscious bias, we feel that women need to perform even better and more than the men just because of unconscious bias. Not that any of these exist everywhere, but since I'm discussing the subject, I need to bring up everything that has to cover the subject properly. But the biggest real challenge in gender gap is what we call the second generation gender bias. And I know not a lot of people talk about it, because either they don't know about it or they don't want to open a Pandora box. So the second generation gender bias is actually very subtle. It has always been there. When someone tells you it has always been done this way, this is second generation gender bias, because it's already embedded in an organizational culture, in its procedures, in its guidelines. It's basically a wall that is invisible and unconscious that stops women from moving forward. It's the workplace practices and patterns that discriminate against females. And the results from an unfair system that unconsciously is biased towards men. So we have, for example, we expect certain qualities from a leader, but that's why when women start to act as they should act as themselves, they don't become part of that theory or that idea anymore. And that's why the reason of the second generation is most of the top executives, we saw the figures, only 15% and only 9% and 5%, because the top executive leadership is left for men. So the women are left out of this decision-making loop. Why? Because again, unconscious bias, the in-groups. That when someone mentors someone, they usually look at people that look like them, cloning people that are like them. And that's, but because women are left out of that loop, that's why they don't have that great chances of advancing. And that's, you know, I call second generation is like monoxide gas, you know, that if it like fills a room, it can actually kill someone, but it has no odor and it has no smell and you can't touch it, but it's there and it's a killer. That's basically what second generation gender bias is. So part of the examples of that is that men are still on the top of the executive positions. Acceptance of certain leadership qualities are more accepted in men than in women. A natural tendency to advocate for people that are in groups that are cloning us. Job description wording. They found out that the job description usually is written in an aspirational way rather than actually a realistic way. So some of the job description have like, for engineering, for example, it has to be an engineer that managed them. You know, or job description have so many things, including you have to be on call 24/7, or you need to be able to lift 100 pounds. So that leaves women out. And there is something actually that men, when they see a job description, even if it's not filling 100% their capabilities and abilities, they will apply for it. But women won't. It has to be a perfect fit for a woman to go ahead and apply for these jobs. And also, they never ask, the leaders, the males, never ask, or mostly do not ask about the interest in a woman for a project that is overseas assignment, because they figure out she leads her family, so she's not going to be able to move or to relocate. And also policies like a man to be on call 24/7, and also the need of the leader to be aggressive. So let's see what role the woman does in this gender gap. Because now we talked about organization role. Now let's talk about the role of the woman. And we actually put ourselves in little boxes sometimes. We don't fight back as we should as women. This is number one. The number two, we try not to attract attention. So we occupy the smallest place there is. When they sit, I mean, we see how they take that much space. Right? The men in the room are going to hate me by the end of the day. I mean, no disrespect, I promise. You know, you're here. You're advocating for women leadership, so thank you. So we try not to attract attention. One of the things that I used to do before, and I had to change it, and it took me a while, is that when we talk or when we send an email, it starts by, I just wanted to. Just diminishes everything that comes after it. So please take it off your vocabulary. Please. And it will take a while. But it took me a while, you know, but it's when you said, even communication, when you go, that's it. That's it. You killed it before it even starts. Don't do that. And then women have a tendency when we communicate, even when we are leaders, we start by a statement and we end it by a question. So it's a beautiful day. Don't you think so? And this other people can translate as you're not confident or you don't know the answer. When in contrary, you want to be participative. You want to start a conversation. But be careful on how that translates on the outside. The ways of communication, stand tall. Look at people in the eye. You know, own who you are. And just talk as in a good voice, and don't go with a lower tone of voice. You know, and there are some people that you know, they talk into, like, you can't even hear them when they talk. Or when they talk, they go either high or low or like going like that. All that communication styles doesn't help you. You have to be heard, you have to be looked at, you know. And one of the things that women don't do, even in meetings when they know they're right and whoever is saying something is not that correct, they do not interrupt. How many times a man interrupts a woman versus a woman interrupts a man? And it's not about being disrespectful. It's about, can I add something? There is always a way that you can engage yourself in a conversation. And then we are afraid to negotiate salaries, promotions, you know, even employment, contracts, because we don't want to contradict anybody. We don't want to, like, make waves in the water. So we keep like quiet, hopefully they won't see me, so I just keep doing what I'm doing. And this is basically what creates part of the gap. They don't speak when they're not considered for leadership training, for career advancement, for job rotation, being put on the fast track. They don't speak up. They say, oh, that's okay, they'll get me the next time. And they don't speak up about that. And also, they don't demand a seat on the table to voice their concern and their need, and they need to do that. And they shy away from self-branding. We were just talking about that like a few minutes ago. Ladies, branding is bragging. If you don't brag about yourself, no one else will. So you need to own it. And you shouldn't be apologetic about who you are. This is who you are. Again, you are accepting people for who they are, not who you want them to be. And you need to demand the same right. To demand that you are accepted the way you are, not the way you want to be. And not being put in a box. One of the other things that women do, when there is a project done, they tell you, oh, great, Anna, you made a great job. You did great results. Oh, it wasn't only me. It was the whole team. Versus male, they say, oh, thank you. We worked so hard and we did this. You need to do that as well. Own your success. Own your results. Don't be owned by it, but own it. You did that. You worked very hard to get there. So some of the challenges that women meet, one is societal, organizational, and environmental. What does that mean? Societal is the lack of accessibility to education. And of course, society and conscious bias for women. The second part is internal structure and organizations, like the guidelines, the corporate management procedures, and all that sometimes are biased without really like second-generation gender bias like we talked about. And then there is the government, where there is inconsistent reporting of statements and sharing with them, and they also do not investigate most of discrimination cases properly and don't share the result for it. So let's now start talking about what can we do. We talked about the problem. There is always a solution to any problem, right? So we need to talk about the solution because we need to be positive and we need to take a stand and we need to start doing something. So as everything else, we cannot alone, like I said, gender gap is not a woman issue. It's a society issue. So unless we involve everybody, and we cannot succeed. And one of the reasons why the gender gap did not close that much is because they left it up to the women only. In Egypt, we say one hand cannot clap. You have to, yeah, that's what we say. You have to use both hands. So it has actually three parts of what need to be inclusive. One, organizational help. The second, the role of the women on how we solve it. And the third, how to engage the man in the conversation or in the issue. So it's like a triangle with three sides. If you take away one side, it's no longer a triangle. Okay? So let's talk about that. So part of the organization, they don't have to do all the steps, but at least see what matches what can be done to solve the gender gap. First thing is to have a very clear diversity statement that they stand for. That doesn't waver, that it's not only glitzy word on a website or we are diverse, we believe in inclusion. It's not good enough. It's not the flavor of the month. It has to be lived in and out every single day. Flexibility and balance of time, not only for females, but for males as well. Paternal and maternal leaves have to be included. And this way we create that balance. We're going to talk about why in a second. Non-biased leadership training, where the specification that you need to join basically apply only to males. So we need to have non-biased leadership training and development. Create proper succession planning and not having these plans and folders gathering dust on a shelf. Maybe do job rotation, shadowing, enrichment, fast track. There are a lot of ways where we can do proper succession planning. Proper assessment and career development that will match every single gender. Proper coaching, mentoring, and sponsoring. And sponsoring and coaching are different. Coaching is when someone takes, usually an executive, take an interest in you and help you get the best that you can be. A sponsor is someone actually tuning your horn for you and going places and taking you to the next place. So that's why we need to look not only for a mentor or a coach, but also for a sponsor to advance. And also, we need to broaden our outreach programs. Look at different associations that we never went before, colleges that are different, diverse communities that we are different, publications that are different, even internet sites that are different. And choose the best candidate for the best job. Encourage role modeling by women leaders. So we put women leaders and like this. I mean, I couldn't be happier than having a women leadership series. Like, you role model the success of your own female leaders. And when keep reports and distribute reports annually about female recruits that are succeeding in your organization, that shows people like, you know what, they're here and they are doing success. It's part of role modeling as well. And it makes people feel, if she can do it, I can do it too. You know, like, again, it's like the Barbie, you know, if I can have a Barbie, you know, from overseas and I come here and speak, that's like my dream come true. Also, monitor selection. Usually when there are big project management that can make or break a career, usually the leaders that are mostly male will pick, again, their clones to do it. So they have that high visibility and they put on the fast track. And that's why we need to look at how we can make it gender equally in gender when we choose for this projects. And also offer incentive for education reimbursement. Zero tolerance for stereotyping and discrimination. Have very strong HR policies in place. Proper progressive performance evaluation. Then when we come to the women, what women should do. But before I go to the women, however, the balance is very important in gender, in covering the gender gap. But as much as you want to be inclusive, we cannot alienate the majority as well. Diversity is not only about a group, it's about everybody. So we cannot just concentrate in one group and leave the rest. So let's talk about what women can do. Own their brands, their skills, and their success. Stop underselling themselves. It's like, no problem, I will accept that. Or no problem, I'll do it and you don't need to mention my name. You know, I'll just be part of the team and I'll go in the shade and I don't have to be at the table. Please, ladies, don't do that. Again, own your success and don't be owned by it. Stand for yourself and speak up. Get rid of the glass ceiling excuse, because a lot of people say, no matter what I do, there is this glass ceiling, and no matter what I do, I'm not going to go anywhere. I can tell you from personal experience, it's not true. It's what you do with it. And also, the self-prophecy of women that is just like, I can go so far, and this is where I'm going to start. If this is what you think, this is where you will get. You know, remember, our brain doesn't know the difference between positive and negative. So, and I'm amazed how people always start with what they don't want, not what they want. So you tell the brain, don't smoke, don't smoke, don't smoke. And since the subconscious doesn't know the difference between positive and negative, what does it hear? Smoke. So it smokes more. This is neuroscience. This is not really something like, you know, just like a hocus pocus or something. No, it's actual science. You know, that's why we need to concentrate on what we want and go for it. And also, stop acting as a victim. And stop letting the imposter syndrome take control of our life. I'm glad to see that you have ERGs and, or affinity groups. It's important to have a safe environment for women to talk. So they don't feel like if I'm going to talk about that, I'm going to be judged. So it's very important to give them that safe environment. Engage the organizations in culture development or organization development that will actually facilitate their progress ahead. Strategize career plans. You know, ask your bosses, how can I go from here to here? What can I do to get on that project? Ask for it. You don't ask, you don't get. And when you ask for feedback, please don't get defensive. Take everything with a grain of salt, and you will learn from it. Good, bad, ugly, you will always learn from it. Okay? And just whenever you claim your effort and claim your success, don't say, oh, I was just a part of the team. Yeah, everybody is a part of the team, but everybody needs to shine for the role that they have done. And also, one of the things that women have to realize that once they are in leadership position, they feel that they are under a microscope. And if they're going to be like helping other women, they're going to be looked at as soft or positively and consciously biased toward women. So they become more aggressive actually on other women. So we need to remember that, not to be that. Ask for help and seek for coaching. The last thing that we need to do is to engage the man. Have it as an ally, as an advocate. Men don't get involved because they either don't know that there is something going on, they are oblivious to it, or they don't want to be seen as mushy or soft, or they don't want to be, it's not touching them, so they don't want to be there. The most important thing is to remember that millennials are already 54 million in the workplace. By 2025, they're going to be 75% of the workforce. There are dual careers in every single home for millennials. So they are socially responsible, they look for fairness, they look for diversity. 2025 Z is coming, and if we think millennials are bad, actually I don't think they're bad, I think they're great. I love millennials and I'm an advocate for millennials, you know, but Z also are totally different. They look for that fairness. Increase their awareness through education, give them unconscious bias training, you know, explain how to be champion, because sometimes they want to help, but they don't know how to help. So we need to show them the way. It's about time. It's about time to embrace diversity, because diversity could be the solution for a lot of problems that we have. Let's rise together as one team, and this is even your slogan here. We need to start that uncomfortable dialogue. It's not going to be pretty sometimes, but we need to go there, as long as we respect each other, no matter how different that we are. We need to accept and not tolerate. We stand stronger when we stand together. So let's go back to the basics of being a human being. Let's just start implementing gender advantage rather than talking anymore about gender gap and gender diversity and inequality. So again, when we stand together, we become a stronger force, something to be reckoned with. Thank you so much for having me today.
Wow, I mean, they said no duh at the very end. I feel like just giving you a round of applause is like a no duh.
Thank you.
But Sahar, thank you so much for speaking to us today. We have time for, I think, 2 questions. I know some people might have to leave. But also Sahar will be here if you have any other questions afterward. But before you do leave, this is the beginning of a conversation. And I'm very proud to say that we here at Mattel are taking many of the steps that you saw on those slides. But at the same time, we need help to do that. So please get involved. Please come to us with ideas. Please join the conversation. No matter where you sit in the organization, we want to help make this change, and we want you to help us make that. So do we have any questions for Sahar? We have time for maybe two questions.
Your question might help someone else that is too shy to ask.
No, okay, I have a question.
Please.
So, you know, when you were talking about the gender advantage, I feel like a lot of that is shifting the framing of a topic.
Yes.
So we tend to hear the gender gap, the glass ceiling. I think a lot of what your presentation did was shift the way we frame a conversation. So how important is that framing, that branding, as we really think about addressing a lot of these topics?
I've always believed in one thing. What is the definition of insanity? And that's what we have been talking about. Diversity gap, but nothing is done about it. So let's take a stand and let's have a mind shift that will start a brand new movement, you know, for women to acquire what actually women need and deserve to have. And yes, let's start talking about gap advantage. Remember, the brain hears only what you want it to say. So you need to tell your brain what you actually need to do rather than what you don't want to do. So if we want advantage, the brain will actually work with you to achieve the goals that you tell it you want to achieve it. That's ABC neuroscience and psychology. So we need to start talking on the positive, not ignoring. Remember, it's about using your strength versus your weaknesses. People spend their life trying to show their weaknesses, and it's a waste of time. We need to start using our strength, knowing what we have as weaknesses, not ignoring it, but actually going with the strength and start shifting that conversation. Okay, it's done. We know we have a problem, for God's sake. We know we have issues. So what are we going to do about it? Let's move to have it as an advantage. turn the weakness into strength.
Great. We have one more question here. Yes.
Which country do you think is the most progressive on these issues?
I want to say the United States.
Okay.
You know, believe it or not, I mean, a lot of countries, there are also the countries that they consider a feminine culture, like the Netherlands, you know, Sweden, because it's a feminine culture, so everybody there is valued, and there is a balance, actually, of representation of everybody. And then comes probably some of the European countries, you know, and unfortunately, the Middle East is not even halfway. You know, I mean, there are countries where women still can drive, you know, and don't vote. You know, so these are all things. Israel is one of the countries that is also very progressive in having gender equality. So it's something that we need to also to talk about. So, but I think mostly it's the United States. With everything going on, I mean, all the issues that we have in gender gap and whatever, we're still the most progressive country.
Great. Well, thank you again, Sahar. Big round of applause for Sahar. And thank you all for coming.